This is so Jaden and I peek behind the curtain here. Jaden and I sometimes at the last minute we're like, "Hey, who do you want to? Who should we kick this off?" And like at the last, Jaden's like, "You!" At the last second. Sorry, everybody. Jumping into AI Applied. Welcome to AI Applied. We're going to be talking about Anthropic today for a couple of actually really cool things. One is that this has been coming in the wind for a little while about people sort of feeling like Anthropic is overtaking OpenAI. But for a long time, I was very skeptical. Not because I'm not a big Anthropic fan. We are, and I
You're the oldest Anthropic fan. You've been doing it the OG since day one, so you get some sort of award for that. Because I was like, Connor, really Anthropic? Like, bro, stop talking about this model. It's not that big of a deal. You were in love with it from the beginning.
I was in love with it from the beginning, and not for coding. I was in love with the beginning because it just mimicked voice better than anybody else. Remember this, Jaden? Like,
Because they
remember,
pirated every book in the world.
that, including mine, by the way. So I feel like I have I got sort of a note from Anthropic saying like, "Hey, we owe you a certain amount of money." I'm like, "All right." So that was actually kind of cool. But I just remember when Opus came out, Opus 3, whatever. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like this is incredible." But the thing about Anthropic is it's been more in the wind. Do you know what I mean, Jaden? Like,
Mhm.
remember back in early 2024, we were talking about this, and Anthropic was predicting they would do, I think, 800 million in ARR.
Yep.
And we were like, no way. Like, because at
Mhm.
that time, remember, Anthropic had two things. There was the safety one, and they had the long context window. And then all of a sudden, Gemini comes along and be like, you call that a context window? That's not a context window. This is a context window. But then Anthropic overnight, it felt like overnight, when Opus came out, all of a sudden it sounds like people. And we're like, what is happening right now? And then code. So Anthropic did something really interesting. They were really thinking, I don't want to call it B2B exactly, but like while OpenAI is sort of trying to grab every consumer under the sun, and they did a pretty good job, they're close to a billion. Anthropic really leaned into enterprise, and now it's not just, oh, we feel like Anthropic's better. There are numbers, Jaden,
Yep.
pointing to Anthropic actually beating out OpenAI in enterprise. And I'm actually surprised at that because even I would say 6 months ago, if an enterprise said, because we work with a lot of enterprises at AI Mindset, and if they said like, yeah, we're really looking at Anthropic, I'm like, good for you. No shade to OpenAI, but I'm like, good for you. Like that's a really cool progressive thing. So how did this happen so fast?
Okay, the first thing I got to say is I love, like, big shout out to Ramp for putting out this. They have a whole report called Ramp's AI Index. Mercury also does reports like this. Mercury is like the fintech bank that a lot of startups use after Silicon Valley Bank went bankrupt. But anyways, I love it when we have actual like banks and payment processing organizations giving us these reports, because I mean it's basically the best source of truth for this. And I think for Ramp in particular, I don't think they actually, I was looking into their like how they came up with the study. I don't think they published like findings from every single one of their customers. I think they took like a sample size and then kind of published that, which maybe people have to opt in, or I don't really know how. I don't know what the deal is with like sharing the data, but I love that they give out the data and it's real transaction from real businesses. So to me, I'm thrilled about that. You can trust this. But basically, in the data, there's a headline number and something that's even more wild. So the headline number here is that, according to Ramp, businesses that are spending on Anthropic is about 34.4% of businesses, and businesses that are spending on OpenAI is 32.3%. So from the headline, it's like, okay, it looks like Anthropic, they're a couple percentages up. They kind of edged them out. But the really crazy thing to me is that in May of last year, 2025, 9% of businesses in the Ramp sample were paying Anthropic. So Anthropic went from last year having 9% to over 30%. So
It's
they
insane.
moved up 26 points in 12 months basically. And OpenAI over that same period of time was flat and actually declined 1%. So it's not like OpenAI is getting like hammered, right? I mean, maybe it's exact same usage. They went down 1%. That's like nothing bad, but they have
Right.
plateaued, and Anthropic went up 26%. Wild.
So can I just sort of say on that too? It is strange because when you think about how companies like hockey stick up, right? Like it's not usually because, oh, they're just like, working a little smarter or something like that, right? It's like there is this new thing that everybody's like, we can't live without that thing. And
Yeah.
these things do come out of nowhere. And if you look at like histograms of Anthropic's stuff, it's wild. It looks like, you're looking at these small little houses and then it's next to a skyscraper. It's just crazy how fast it goes. And it was really based off the back of code. And coding is pretty straightforward. it's a pretty hard metric, right? Like, does this encode better than these other things? And I think that coders are really, really good at just determining like what's the best model out there. But and Gene, just to sort of say one more word on that, because I get asked a lot, maybe you get asked this too, like which model is best. By the way, I didn't lead us down this path, but by the way, quick shout out to AI Box, Jaden's AI Box on AI, because like for under $10 a month, you can actually test these models against each other. I don't know how the economics work, but it's unbelievable. I'm spending so freaking much money on all these things, and now you can just say like, how about Claude versus Gemini versus OpenAI versus Grok, etc. Super super powerful. Check that out. But it's usually on these tools, Jaden. People are like, which one do you think is best? And I'm like, don't worry about that, right? Just like unless you're talking to a power user and you're talking to another geek or something like that, right? But for the most part, I'm like, what are you comfortable with right now? People are like, well, I still use chat. I'm like, use chat GPT. It's not that big a deal. But something like coding, there's just a very sort of like more well-defined metric. And so when you see people like jumping off on that, and by the way, and we've heard from some of our friends over at Google and other places, they're like, look, we're coming for Anthropic. So everybody's coming for the coding market. But it's been
Mhm.
fascinating to see, which also then makes me think about the other thing, Jaden, you and I were texting about earlier. You were telling me about this. Wasn't it sort of like Claude Code and how fast they ship or something like that? I missed that story.
Okay, yeah, that is a wild story. I want to put one caveat really
Yeah.
quickly on this data, just so everyone knows, like full disclosure on it. It is from about 50,000 companies that the data comes from, so it is a pretty big sample size. But the data is slightly skewed because on Ramp right now, it's basically a certain subsection of U.S. companies. So I wouldn't say this is like all U.S. companies by any means. It's basically companies that are USA based. They're mid market. They're usually venture backed and they're usually kind of skewed towards kind of like tech companies or
Right.
tech
That's
companies in
important.
that field. So companies are kind of on the front edge working with a lot of this stuff. So that makes sense. So just so
Actually,
it's not like
but let's hover on that for a second because that is important. Like when it's sort of like when a tech company or somebody like that does surveys, it's like, right, but those people are already talking about AI and thinking about AI. So for sure, tech companies, but still, the fact that OpenAI is even, or the fact that Anthropic's even competing on these scales
yeah.
is absolutely wild. But yes, if you're looking at like the massive companies, they're still really leaning ChatGPT. And also, Jaden, as you know, they really lean Copilot still, which is why I'm happy that Copilot's getting a little better now.
Yes, 100%. Okay, the other story that you mentioned that I think is super fascinating, Anthropic's Claude Code chief, who is Kat Wu, said that Claude Code is now shipping on a week-long cycle. They don't have like any roadmaps. They're expecting to hit 80% growth, and they're basically betting everything on their models getting better. They bet everything on the model. So there's an interview and there's a whole bunch of absolutely wild statements that came out of it. But a couple things I want to pick apart there. The first is just the shipping velocity, the no roadmap. I mean, evidently they have core products, they have core directions. But it is, to be fair, probably hard for them to build a roadmap where they're like, hey, we want all of these features in the world, because basically as soon as they can think of a feature, they have an absolutely cracked team and they have the model that can pump out the features faster than everyone else. Like when we're building AI box, for example, we'll run into problems like rate limits. We'll run into problems like, well, for example, I was talking to my CTO recently, and he's like, just so you know, if you wanted to absolutely eliminate every bug in the entire world, there's recursive model patterns that we can build that we already have them. And you can just pick what page on the app, what feature, what area you want to point it at. And it can just keep testing over and over and over again and fixing and optimizing over and over and over again. And he's like, if you have a big enough fire hose, you can point that at the whole code base and essentially eliminate every single bug in
Oh.
existence. You could add any single feature in existence. What it comes down to is cost. So does Anthropic care about the cost of running their model? Absolutely not. I mean,
Mhm.
they're getting it at cost, right? So they're really crushing it there. But regardless, they have unlimited use. There's no capacity, there's no rate limit. They can just use as much as they want. So they absolutely are doing this. And I think a lot of us are feeling this. If you use the Claude desktop app like I have on my MacBook, every single day there is an update, without doubt, every single day. And it's like, hey, sometimes it's like 2 or 3 times a day. And I've had it where it's like 6 times a day. Sometimes it's actually annoying because I'm like working on something. I'm midway through a conversation. It's like, hey, restart your Claude thing. And I'm like, I don't want to restart it. I got all these projects going. But I'm like, there's like a breaking point where like they finish and I need to check something. Okay, fine. Like restart the Claude app. And then all of a sudden the design is completely different. There's like new features. Things have been moving around. So they are shipping at a crazy rate. And I think at this point, they basically say, here are the segments we want to target. Here are the customers we want to get. Here's the other companies. And they just kind of are fire hosing right now. It's insane.
Yeah, and this is the other thing about how Anthropic works and what it can tell us about our companies or your company if you're an entrepreneur or anything else. But like, people are now changing what they expect in things. Like I remember you know, like social media, right? Like sort of like we're old enough to remember like before TikTok, and I'm sure everybody else is, right? But like it was just interesting because like we occasionally post. We're not like a big social media company, but like you know we're linked. LinkedIn is sort of like our platform, right? Because we do B2B for the most part, and
Mhm.
we have a course that goes out to anybody can buy the course, but like we sell the course to tens of thousands of people inside single organizations, and so that's really our platform. Like I'm not a big TikTok guy, and my team is always like, hey, like do a thing on TikTok and just like be like walking outside or like be like making whatever. And I'm like, but it seems so unprofessional. And they're like, Connor, you just do not get it. This is how people absorb content now because I'm old. I don't really get it. But that's about shipping too. Like it used to be, Jaden, and I'm talking about let's call it mid 2024. Like let's call it like Bard, right? Like Google's Bard. That
Mhm.
even shipped pretty fast. Actually, in fairness, that probably shipped a little too fast, but that maybe doesn't prove my point. But people are used to shipping, breaking, as long as it's been red teamed, right? Like as long as the guardrails are in place, so it's not actually like literally dangerous in some way. People now, I think consumers have a much higher threshold for like, yeah, give us something and we'll see if it works. Don't you think? Like, I mean, like on Twitter, you sort of see like, hey, this doesn't work, and then you see Boris out there, Cherney, whatever, sort of saying like, hey, you're saying like Claude Code is or 4.7 doesn't work as well 4.6. What do you mean? But they just like ship it, and Jaden, I just feel like, and you tell me because you're shipping all the time. I think people just have a higher tolerance for this isn't perfect when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's so much better than what we've ever had before. I think the days of like absolutely nailing down it perfect and it's not going to change for a long time are kind of gone in a lot of ways. Maybe people hear me and think I'm saying like buggy because sometimes there are like little bugs or glitches. But if I get a bug on Claude and it's fixed the next day, I'm really not going to complain. It's like,
Fine
oh,
with
this
it.
is annoying. This will probably get fixed tomorrow. And when there's an update and it's fixed tomorrow, I'm like, all right, move on with my life. I don't even need to go send them a customer support email. You know what I mean? So I think that there's some really impressive stuff happening as far as the velocity goes. One crazy thing, so Cat Wu said that right now their team, like with the week long thing, they get an idea for a product shift, and within 7 days that will be completely rolled out and done. That's the product cycle, and then the next week it just restarts all over again. Something crazy. So this happened at a big conference. Dario Amade was talking. I think this was Code with Claude 2026. That's kind of their big like conference or whatever, and he said that there's a wild quote from him as far as their growth. He said, "We tried to plan very well for a world of 10x growth per year, and yet we saw 80x, and so that's the reason we have had difficulties with compute." I think the 80x is referring specifically to like how many people like the demand for Claude Code and some of
Yeah.
those. I mean,
Yeah.
Claude Cowork, those kinds of tools, right? Not just the
Mhm.
chat. But and that uses a lot more compute than just like a regular chat. But still, that is wild. They're like, we were planning for 10x growth. I mean, 10x growth, that's not 10%, that's
But
10x.
but
We're
we've
planning for
seen it.
10x growth and we got 80x growth. Like, how do you plan for that?
I don't know, but that's why these histograms are so crazy, where they just like looks like you're running into a skyscraper when it's sort of like saying like, you know, ARR and everything like that. And I know we're sort of like wrapping up here, Jane, but like one of the really crazy things when you think about that is like that's why everybody kept getting rate limited. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I think I was telling you like Robert Haslam, our creative strategist, and I and our whole team are building on this like really cool new platform for our company AI Mindset, sort of like which I'll go into when we're ready. But we've created it unbelievably fast. We're now like just stress testing and all that kind of stuff. But my God, like I used Claude Design so much to prototype this thing that it was Thursday and it said you can't use it again until Tuesday. And now this is why they're buying like data centers and things like that. But anyway, I know we're at time, but this is unbelievable. Guys, if you're out there and you're thinking like, well, how fast can we, you know, ship and how perfect does it have to be? Remember that people have a higher tolerance. Like you just gain trust with your people and then sort of say like, we're going to ship, we're going to fix fast. And Anthropic is doing that in spades. They're doing a phenomenal job. Listen, if you have not left a rating and review, you know if you're that person. You know it. I look in the mirror. That's you. If you haven't done it, we ask so little. If you would be willing to do it, it would make us so unbelievably happy. It would be such a huge gift. We are so grateful for all of you listening. We get amazing feedback, so thank you for that too. And otherwise, we will see you in the next episode.